And if she hadn't have opened her mouth, I think that this movie might have done well. They might have just been able to ride on the hopium of the movie and some well-cut trailers, and people would have paid to go see it. And then it would have fallen off when people knew it was garbage.
You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
Rachel Zegler wasn't always a polarizing figure. In fact, her early days could have been ripped straight from a Disney fairy tale. Bursting onto the scene with an angelic voice and wide-eyed ambition, she found herself cast in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, a modern update on a timeless classic. Critics showered her with praise, describing her as a fresh, inspiring talent who radiated promise. She went from relative unknown to red carpet regular, almost overnight. At first, it seemed like destiny. Disney itself was craving a new face to lead their live-action adaptations, and Rachel fit that mold to perfection. She was young, driven, had a powerhouse singing voice, and most importantly, wasn't afraid to speak her mind.
Do you know, like, how hard it is to find an attractive young woman in Hollywood who can act and sing? It's not hard. Like, who just isn't going to offend half the country?
These people, and this is the difference between a business owner or someone who does very well for themselves in the private sector to become wealthy. This person was born looking a certain way and has a God-given ability.
After her standout performances, rumors began circulating that she'd not only star in Snow White, but would also become a long-term fixture in future Disney ventures. The idea was to usher in a new era of modern princess films, ones that conveyed progressive messages and appealed to a broader audience. Insiders whispered about potential spin-offs and cross-franchise tie-ins, seeing in her a future brand ambassador with undeniable star power. Yet, as the months rolled on, a different side of Rachel started to surface, one that critics labeled hyper-woke and fans described as refreshingly bold. While many applauded her readiness to tackle issues head-on, there were pockets of the internet and entire demographic segments who found her approach abrasive.
Was this Academy Awards? Anyway, feminist Conor McGregor.
Who the fuck is that guy?
It's a weird walk for a weird broad, and I don't like her.
It is, and it's really mean to put her next to Gal Gadot, who's...
The real trouble, however, began when she applied that unfiltered candor to her Disney role. And that's where our story takes its first sharp turn. By the time Rachel had set foot on the Snow White set, her public persona was well on its way to becoming polarizing. Everyone expected a modern reimagining, but no one predicted how strongly she'd criticize elements of the original 1937 animated classic. Interviews began popping up in which she described the original storyline as weird for emphasizing the prince's role in Snow White's life. She joked about him being a stalker, a comment that sparked a fierce online debate. To some, she was a breath of fresh air, calling out antiquated plotlines and championing female empowerment.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
Yeah. But to others, especially longtime Disney loyalists, it felt like a personal slap in the face. Was this the first official meltdown? Within hours of these interviews going live, hashtags like boycott Snow White caught fire on multiple platforms.
On the set of West Side Story, where Steven Spielberg and co. were demanding that she prove how Latina she really is, since her name doesn't sound Latina, and she was angrily saying, did I have to bring in my little abuelita for you to believe that I was Latina?
Influential voices began critiquing Rachel for supposedly trashing the brand she was hired to represent. Fans of the classic film felt ridiculed, as though they were being told they were outdated for loving a simple fairy tale. Critics accused her of ignoring the original's historical context, that a story from 1937 might naturally reflect the norms of its era. Yet the more the controversy grew, the more Rachel seemed to double down. Additional interview snippets surfaced where she expanded on her critiques, even poking fun at the notion of true love altogether.
There'll be 25,000 more just like her knocking on the same doors that she had opened to her. She had the opportunity of a lifetime, and instead of being humble and grateful, she was entitled and a snot. That's her thanks to Steven Spielberg, who discovered her and made her. So she's an ingrate, she's annoying, and I think she's probably two and done.
For some, this was exactly what they wanted. A forward-looking, unabashedly outspoken star. For others, it was pure sacrilege. The internet fanned the flames, generating countless memes, video responses, and heated debates. Viewers were torn between admiring her courage to speak her truth and questioning whether she was deliberately alienating the audience she was supposed to charm. If online outcry was the first spark, the real blaze began when whispers spread that Disney itself was furious behind closed doors. The entire premise of Snow White was to pay homage to a cornerstone of the Disney empire, something that had resonated with families for generations.
For it.
Her friend screaming.
Wow.
And it's bothered nobody was in there. Nobody
Can you go to the yeah, that's very so this is Bob Iger.
But now, in the eyes of some executives, the lead actress was undercutting the movie's nostalgic value at every turn. Multiple insider reports started claiming that the film's budget had ballooned, pushing it into the stratosphere of mega productions that simply had to succeed. Early projections pegged this live-action remake as a guaranteed box office juggernaut. After all, Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin had raked in money, largely due to a careful blend of classic charm and modern updates. Yet as new controversies surfaced, advanced test screenings didn't look promising, and when final numbers finally crawled in, they were shockingly low.
It was
the
this
people
awakening
that we need
of...
to educate, the people that we need to love into awareness.
Love them in the right direction.
Yeah, because there's nothing more effective than 19-year-olds educating the rest of the voting public while yelling, "Okay, boomer." But we'll CGI dwarfs, so we'll guarantee no employment for little people while getting rid of this other component that warranted CGI. It was the worst decision they could possibly make.
Amid this grim box office outlook, a rumor exploded across industry circles. Disney was looking into whether Rachel had broken certain clauses in her contract. These morality clauses, typical in major film deals, outline how personal conduct can impact a production's image. Did her statements disparage the property enough to invoke financial penalties? Could the studio theoretically demand she return bonus money or forfeit part of her paycheck? Suddenly, the word restitution was bouncing around. Speculations ranged from mild contract renegotiations to full-blown lawsuits. The idea that Disney might hold its star personally accountable for the film's underperformance sent shockwaves through Hollywood. While some saw this as an extreme measure, others argued that Rachel's negative remarks had inflicted real damage, driving away family audiences who had cherished Snow White for decades.
And I will look forward to her not getting cast in any more movies for a long time until she actually does learn something about humanity and humility.
One unconfirmed source even claimed top executives joked about billing her for every lost ticket sale. Whether meant in jest or not, the sentiment suggested a level of frustration rarely seen at the highest rungs of the Disney hierarchy. Then, just as gossip reached a crescendo, Rachel Zegler seemingly evaporated. No press appearances, no presence on social media, no interviews explaining or defending her position. Overnight, she went radio silent. This abrupt disappearance caught everyone off guard, prompting even more speculation.
Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some CGI weird generated version of them. It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke, but also don't alienate half of the country when you're putting out a product.
Was Disney orchestrating a forced retreat to protect what remained of the film's promotional campaign? Or was Rachel acting independently to shield herself from mounting criticism? Around this time, rumors began circulating that she had boarded a plane bound for Dubai. Whether for leisure, work, or sanctuary, nobody knew. Yet the timing was suspiciously perfect. It happened right after news surfaced about emergency Disney meetings and potential legal recourse. Could she be dodging lawyers? The question arose in numerous social media posts, with armchair detectives sharing flight data and scouring every corner of the internet for updates. The hush-hush nature of her move only fueled the intrigue.
Disney's Bob Iger says their mission is to entertain, not send messaging as Snow White sales compete for worst performing live-action Disney adaptation ever. Go a little bit lower to see if there's any other quotes by him.
In Hollywood, appearances are everything. And an extended absence when your film is in meltdown mode generally signals one of two things: a planned PR strategy to let controversies die down, or a sign that the star feels so besieged there's no safe way to show their face. Even those sympathetic to Rachel began to wonder if fleeing was the best course of action. Some fans insisted she just needed a break from the public eye, while others believed she was deliberately evading the legal and media firestorm. Either way, the result was the same. Every day she stayed hidden, the rumor mill churned harder, and the theories grew wilder. As tongues kept wagging, a curious development took shape online. A perfectly polished apology statement appeared on Rachel's social media. Or was it really Rachel's voice?
So, I mean, this woman has clicked every box. And just for cherry on top at the end, she gave an interview last week talking about how they were basically a bunch of white supremacists.
But Rachel Zegler made it so hateable that you really sabotaged and took hundreds of millions of dollars from the studio. I don't know how anyone would ever want to go into business with her ever again.
I mean,
observers immediately noticed that the post read like it had been assembled by a corporate PR team, sterile, carefully phrased, and far too generic to match her outspoken persona. Phrases like, "I deeply value the heritage of this timeless story," and "I regret any misunderstanding," replaced the raw fervor that had characterized her earlier interviews. The tone was suspiciously measured, devoid of any specifics or emotional nuance. For many, this apology actually made things worse. Critics argued that if Rachel had truly reconsidered her stance, she'd address people directly, name the controversies, and own her missteps. Instead, the statement glossed over the details, focusing instead on a broad expression of regret that felt aimed at corporate sponsors rather than Disney's fan base. Unsurprisingly, the public backlash only intensified. Viewers posted side-by-side comparisons of Rachel's fiery interviews and the new statement, calling it a stark contrast to her established personality.
Her heroine cannot be in love or be saved by a man, the prince, that she's more focused on becoming the leader she was meant to be, as if women in modern-day America must make that choice.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is not going to be saved
by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming
So she's
about
gonna die.
true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
Even some who wanted to support her found the shift jarring. Was it possible that she truly had a change of heart? Maybe, but the absence of real emotion in the text led most to assume she was being muzzled by Disney's PR machine. This theory gained further traction when an insider leaked that the apology had been drafted by Disney lawyers in an attempt to mitigate financial losses. Allegedly, the note was rushed out in a last-ditch attempt to salvage audience goodwill, but it arrived too late and with the wrong tone. So how was Rachel actually handling all this? Rumors suggest not well. People claiming to be close to her confided that she was blindsided by the immense backlash, crying privately about the abrupt shift from Hollywood's sweetheart to internet's punching bag. There were even anecdotes about her being glued to her phone, watching an endless flood of negative tweets, memes, and scathing YouTube commentaries that dissected her every word. The mental toll, they say, was overwhelming. Meanwhile, her inner circle was allegedly in panic mode, scrambling for a strategy that might repair her reputation. Yet, these insiders reportedly couldn't agree on a single plan. Some wanted her to stage a heartfelt public apology, this time with real humility and personal accountability.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced, it was a huge
You mean your guess is as good as mine
thing. It was,
ethnicity?
trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry. And so it was like...
Our reproductive rights.
Ugh.
Come on,
Okay, Cheshire Cat.
go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
Wow, what a scene.
I don't need your business. Thanks.
Others worried that more public appearances would only feed the controversy. A separate faction urged her to simply lie low for a year or two, hoping audiences would move on to the next scandal. It was a fractured environment, one where every move risked triggering more headlines. And overshadowing all of this were unconfirmed but persistent reports that Disney was either planning or actively threatening legal measures. One theory posited that the best move for Rachel might be to stay quiet and out of sight until any possible suit was settled or dropped. In that scenario, a public reemergence could simply hand lawyers new ammunition, especially if she made any remarks that could be interpreted as defamatory to the studio or the project. Few actresses have faced such an intricate knot of public fury, corporate demands, and possible legal peril all at once. and it was tearing her team apart at the seams. While Rachel's personal saga was brewing into a full-blown fiasco, the Snow White movie itself lumbered into theaters. The results were catastrophic. What should have been a glitzy, nostalgic crowd pleaser turned into a cautionary tale of what happens when a beloved legacy film aims for radical reinvention. Critics lambasted the script for lacking the original's charm and humor, and fans who once adored the 1937 classic found this new version almost unrecognizable.
Be a leader as a female and fall in love and be rescued by a prince. Like, that's incongruous bullshit. That's only the left's version of what it means to be a strong woman or female empowerment.
To many viewers, the heart and soul of the original Snow White was all but erased. Gone was the timeless sense of wonder, replaced instead by an overtly modern approach that felt jarring. Audience members who had grown up loving the gentle princess, the comedic dwarves, and the sweeping romance were stunned by the stark pivot in tone. Initially, Disney executives seemed confident that updating the storyline would appeal to a new generation. However, they either miscalculated the audience's appetite for change or failed to market the film effectively, or both. As word of mouth turned sour, box office numbers plummeted. Theater lobbies were far quieter than executives had anticipated. Even international markets, which sometimes prop up underperforming U.S. releases, showed minimal interest. The pandemic climate didn't help, but critics argued that the real culprit was a misguided creative direction and a mounting online campaign branding the film as anti-classic. The meltdown was so profound that it quickly rose to the top of discussion threads on entertainment sites, overshadowing even other Disney controversies. Naturally, someone had to take the fall. While the film's writers and producers came under fire, the brunt of public ire fell squarely on Rachel Zegler.
And so detached from reality. She's now bragging about the success of Snow White, which is a movie that's going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, and mainly because of her, and because nobody wanted to support her.
They had the whole dwarf midget issue where they decided they weren't going to have any midget actors, right? They were having DEI-inspired magical creatures to replace.
Her comments and interviews, repeated endlessly by outraged fans, became the central evidence of how a single star can ruin a film, or at least sabotage the audience's willingness to give it a chance. This wave of anger turned her name into clickbait gold, guaranteeing that every outlet wanted a piece of the meltdown, further fueling the negative press. Rachel Zegler's critics claim that her outspoken views on the original Snow White and past comments mocking certain political groups have irreversibly damaged the film's reputation. Yet supporters argue she's been made a scapegoat, pointing out that decisions about reinventing a beloved fairy tale usually come from studio executives, not just one actress. They note that Disney often updates classics and sometimes stumbles in the process, especially in today's hyper-reactive social media climate. Regardless, the fallout has left industry insiders uneasy. While some applaud Rachel's boldness, others worry her personal politics and confrontational approach could alienate the very audience Disney depends on. Stories of her old tweets resurfacing have fueled further division, with some producers now rethinking future collaborations. To critics, she's become a cautionary tale, while fans see her as a talented performer caught in a ruthless PR storm. Speculation is rife that Disney might take legal action if it decides that Rachel's public statements triggered morality or PR clauses in her contract. Observers say that would be an extreme step, risking more public backlash for appearing to punish a star over her personal opinions. However, if the studio has grounds to claim financial harm, it could theoretically pursue monetary compensation or other penalties. On the other hand, there's a chance for redemption if Rachel can navigate this crisis and offer a sincere, relatable apology. Hollywood is full of comeback stories, and audiences are often open to forgiving stars who show genuine growth. Yet with her sudden disappearance fueling talk of secret overseas escapes, it's unclear whether Rachel will attempt to fix her relationship with Disney and the public, or if she'll remain out of sight indefinitely.